Did you know that right next to the holiest stone in the Islamic world, they blew up an entire mountain to build a 130-story hotel? While millions of pilgrims borrow money for a lifetime just to get here, 5 floors of the most luxurious tower are reserved exclusively for royalty. A trip that once cost $3,000 has now jumped to over $10,000 in just a few years. Who is really profiting from the faith of 1.8 billion people? By the end of this video, I'll show you a number that even shocks Saudis themselves. Don't skip this. What you're about to learn will change the way you see Mecca forever. In the heart of the Arabian desert lies a city that 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide consider the holiest place on earth, Mecca, birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad, home to the Kaaba, the house of God. But if you stand in the plaza of the Grand Mosque today, what strikes you isn't just the sea of pilgrims in white robes bowing in prayer, it's the sound of drills, cranes, and a 130-story clock tower looming over the Kaaba itself. Many call this progress, but a growing number of voices, including Saudi scholars and architects themselves, call it something else entirely: the commercialization of the house of God. The story begins on the holiest ground itself. To build the Abraj al-Bayt complex, also known as the Royal Mecca Clock Tower, authorities detonated an entire mountain that once overlooked the Grand Mosque. Saudi architect Sami Angawi, a leading expert in Islamic architecture and founder of a research center studying Mecca's urban development, didn't hide his outrage. He compared the approach to dynamite and bulldozers, saying that even the mountains are now being destroyed without mercy. According to him, Mecca was once a zone of peace where the environment is safe, the animals are safe, human beings are safe, a sanctuary where anyone who entered was protected. But that spiritual refuge, he says, is now being dismantled. And it's not just one mountain. According to Hyphen, the government spent $15 billion building the Abraj al-Bayt Tower complex, whose massive clock has cast its shadow over the Kaaba since 2012. The article also cites a haunting hadith: when you see Mecca, its mountains with holes pierced through them, tunnels, and its buildings surpass its mountaintops, then the hour, Judgment Day, has already cast its shadow. For many believers, that prophecy no longer feels like metaphor. What's most controversial isn't just the scale of construction, it's what had to disappear to make way for it. According to investigations by the New York Times and Time, as cited by Newsweek, much of Mecca's ancient history has been demolished to make room for modern structures, with some buildings reportedly constructed directly on the graves and historic homes of some of Islam's most revered early figures. The justification offered is convenient. Saudi Arabia's strict Wahhabi school of Islam forbids the veneration of such sites, making them easy targets for lucrative real estate development. Even an Ottoman fortress and the hill it stood on were leveled to make room for the garish clock tower, according to Green Prophet. Meanwhile, earlier architectural approaches were far more respectful of nature and culture. In 1970, German architect Frei Otto drew inspiration from Bedouin nomadic tribes to design lightweight, collapsible tent cities that sheltered pilgrims from rain and heat while minimizing damage to the fragile ecology surrounding the old city. That careful consideration, many observers argue, has now been entirely abandoned in favor of economic gain. So what's actually inside this controversial tower? According to Newsweek, the massive 45-story building comprises 12 towers with 10,000 bedrooms, 70 restaurants, and 5 rooftop helipads, with 5 floors reportedly reserved exclusively for the Saudi royal family. Surrounding the Grand Mosque today is a sprawling shopping mall, stocked with everything from luxury brands to fast food chains. This is where the wealth divide within what's supposed to be Islam's most egalitarian spiritual journey becomes starkly visible. A premium Hajj package can include round-trip airfare, 6 nights at the 5-star Movenpick Hotel in Mecca, air-conditioned buses, and staff-handled luggage, for $11,500 per person. Yet the disparity between nations is staggering. While pilgrims from Malaysia spend on average half a year's salary on Hajj, those from Bangladesh must set aside up to 3 years of income. These costs keep climbing. According to TRT World, Hajj packages that cost just $3,000, $4,000 5 years ago now start at a minimum of $10,000, even though the actual flight costs roughly $1,000. One Canadian pilgrim asked bluntly, "If travel agencies benefit from group rates, why do prices keep rising so sharply?" The answer, according to TRT World's investigation, lies in a system with little transparency. Only pre-approved travel agencies are permitted to sell Hajj packages through an opaque selection process, and industry insiders describe rampant corruption behind the scenes, with agencies expected to pay kickbacks to well-connected officials. This is where the economic scale becomes truly clear. According to TRT World, religious pilgrimage brings in roughly $12 billion annually to the Saudi economy, accounting for 20% of the country's non-oil GDP. And the ambitions go far beyond that. A member of Saudi Arabia's Committee of Real Estate and Investment once expressed hope that the Hajj and Umrah industry would generate up to $150 billion a year by 2022, hosting as many as 30 million pilgrims by 2030. Some Saudi economists, according to TRT World, have even suggested that Hajj could eventually fund the country's entire economy. This growth is no accident. As the future of oil grows increasingly uncertain, Saudi Arabia has leaned more and more on tourism and pilgrimage as an alternative revenue stream. In other words, Islam's holiest site is, to some degree, being run as a strategic pillar of the kingdom's post-oil economic diversification. Not everyone has accepted this quietly. In April 2019, Libya's most prominent Sunni Grand Mufti, Sadiq al-Ghariani, called for Muslims to boycott the Hajj. A year earlier, in 2018, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the influential Qatar-based cleric linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, issued a fatwa urging Muslims to limit spending on pilgrimage, arguing, "Seeing Muslims feeding the hungry, treating the sick and sheltering the homeless are better viewed by Allah than spending money on the Hajj and Umrah every year." Still, fairness requires noting, commerce has never been separate from Hajj. Research from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, points out that the pilgrimage has always carried a commercial dimension. From ancient caravan trade routes to the Hejaz Railway, built by the Ottoman Empire in the early 20th century. Even the current government argues that much of the construction is simply meant to accommodate the growing number of pilgrims, not purely to generate profit. And according to Green Profit, this remains an unresolved debate between supporters and critics of the developments. Even so, perhaps the most haunting detail is one contrast a visitor once recorded firsthand. Religious tourism brings in roughly $12 billion a year to the national economy. Yet on the very streets surrounding it, women and children are still forced to beg. There is clear evidence of commercialization, a mountain blown up, historical sites erased, prices climbing well beyond reason, and a distribution system lacking transparency. But calling it an outright scam may be too great a leap. After all, charging fees and building infrastructure to serve millions of people every year is something any nation hosting an event of this scale must do. The real question isn't whether money changes hands, but how much, how transparently, and whether the egalitarian spirit at the heart of Hajj is being traded away for profit. That is the question millions of Muslims, and even Saudis themselves, like architect Sami Angawi, are still asking today. Thank you for following this story. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it. For now, this is goodbye. Thank you for staying with Societale Stories.